a point person there that I sort of know who to direct questions to and so forth. And you were the first person that had the microphone icon turn on, so I thought I'd start with you. Let's see. So I'm not sure.
But I've already done it.
Okay. All right, well, wait a few more minutes and I'll see if Craig comes on here or anybody else. There we go. Edison School Building. Okay, let me see. Let me unmute you. Thank you, Craig. Thank you, Brian, for trying to help me. I appreciate it. Thank you, Brian, for trying to help me. I appreciate it.
Are we supposed to have our computers?
Okay.
I just wanted to get
Craig, can you hear me? I have you unmuted at Edison.
I'm not sure if you get the rule.
So has it
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay.
Yeah, I can also hear myself. So it's, when I get started, what I'll do is I'll mute everybody just so I don't hear the echo of myself through the whole session. But is there anything today that you wanted me to focus on in particular?
Well, I guess from our previous discussion, first of all, we have 15 schools that are using IXL, but 5 of them get higher commitments with either our superintendent talking to them or some other things going on. So we probably have about 10 schools that should be joining. And we've got a room full here at Edison, probably about 20 teachers. But again, some have used IXL in the past. Some schools are brand new to it. They didn't have
No, everything's probably going to be the same. It's mostly for new schools.
I'm a pro at IXL.
Okay, then you're fine.
I just want the password.
They're the regular kids' logins.
Okay, so we have a diverse classroom, which is very typical these days. And then do you have some initial ideas about how you're using or implementing IXL?
There is a resource for those that want to use it.
Great. And I caught most of that, Craig. I had somebody else log on from another school, and as people are logging on, I'm getting their background noise, and so I'll just mute as people come on. So I'm not sure. I guess people might still join us, but is it okay if I go ahead and get started? And then I'll just, if anybody joins us, I'll just keep muting people. And then again, for everybody out there, just feel free to chat with me in the chat window. I have to have all of you muted only because I get a lot of background noise. And so I just want to make sure you can all hear me clearly. So the chat feature is just in the lower window, and Lewis and Clark Elementary, sounds like you're having a lot of fun over there. I heard a lot of laughter in the background. It sounds exciting. So it sounds like, looks like you know where to chat to me. So thank you so much. That's great. Okay, so at this point we're going to go ahead and get started. And thank you, Craig, again for giving me just some idea about the background. And let's see, I want to make sure. Okay, Lewis and Clark, you're fine. You were saying you were having trouble with audio. Okay. So at this point, what we're going to do is just start with the beginning, which is where you're going to sign in. So it sounds like some of you have maybe used your sign-in page before, maybe not. And so this is where all of you are going to sign in, all of your students are going to sign in. And the reason for that is, first of all, you have a special page that's been designated, but also as part of your username, it does include @MINOT. And you want to make sure that students come here because if they go to the regular IXL website, they will need to include this as part of their username. I did notice that everybody has their teacher account set up, and it looks like most of you even have students in your roster, so I don't really need to go over that. But if you have any questions about that, please let Craig know, and certainly I can get you that information as well. At this point, we're going to pretend that I've signed in as a teacher on your sign-in page, and now I'm going to go to my teacher account. So this is what you're going to see when you come to your IXL website. I just wanted to start with a couple of basic ideas here over in the welcome area. And so what I'm going to show you here is there's a drop-down, and the profile and settings option is listed below this. And I just wanted to point out that this is where you can change your password at any time. You also want to make sure that the correct state is chosen here because this is going to align to the state standards link. So please make sure that's correct information. If it all looks good, we can just leave it as it is. Now what you're going to notice in the middle of the page here is a breakdown of all of the subject areas that IXL covers as well as the number of skills that are available in each grade level. So what I want you to see here, first of all, is that you will notice it's pre-K through Algebra 2. Let me grab the arrow there so I can have us looking at those areas. And then I also wanted to show you that we are extending this to language arts, and right now language arts is available in grades 2 through 4, and you can work with those skills on a daily basis. You can work with up to 20, and if you want to start a trial, then you and your students will have free access for 30 days. This is just a great place to see exactly how many skills you have to teach. So in 5th grade, you have 268 skills, for instance, and so that lets you know kind of what your pacing might look like throughout the year. When you scroll to the very bottom of this page, you can see it keeps going. So I want you to make sure that you know you can keep scrolling down the IXL homepage here. And you're going to see something called a Help Center. And the reason I like to point this out is that you have to scroll to get to it. I also want you to know there's a lot of frequently asked questions here and answers, so FAQs. And then you will see user guides are also here. And it looks like already some of you have, as I said, set up some of the basics. But if you have any other questions, the user guides are a great way just to do some self-study and to learn more about IXL. If you want to get it back to the top, you just select the IXL logo and there you will go, right back up to the top. Now what you're going to see here along the top are all the links available in IXL. So we have first the math, you have complete and total access to IXL, so just realize that you and your students have full access to the pre-K through Algebra 2 skills. For language arts, you do have access 20 a day or full access for 30 days if you start the trial. We'll look at the reports, the roster, awards, state standards, and membership. So let's go ahead and start at the roster. Even though most of you have set up your roster, let me just talk about a couple of different things that sometimes gets overlooked when you're using this for the first time. So when you came into your roster, you noticed it was empty, and then you started to fill it up with students, which is exactly what you want to do. And you did that fairly easily because when you selected the Add Student link here, you noticed it opened up fields, and because there is a master roster, all you had to do was to enter in the first letter of the student's last name. And so if I'm looking for the last name Lovell, for instance, I can put in an L, and then you probably saw a pop-up appear of all the students that have a last name that begins with the letter L. You selected that student, and into the roster they went. Now you can also manually add students' names. So if you need to do that, you can certainly add a student's name manually. There are some fields that are required, so the first name and last name and the student ID is required. You'll want to make sure that you adhere to the format for the student ID, and then you can add in a password here. Try that again, there we go. So password math, and then I save that information, and in that student goes to my roster. Now this student was added to my roster, so now the student also gets added to the master roster. So if any other teacher needs to have Jeannie and Jeannie Lovell in their roster, they can now pick it up from the master roster. So one student can be in multiple class rosters. That is possible because usually more than one teacher wants to be keeping tabs on a student's work in IXL. When we look at the password column, the reason I'm having us look here is because some of these fields are editable. So if you can left click, then you can change it. So I did a left click here, I can change this, let's say to IXL, and then I just select save, and it will update this information wherever the student exists in the program. Okay? All right, so now we have the students are in your roster. That means that you can look at reports and get them, or actually get them started first in IXL, then start looking at reports. We need to get the information out to students, so perhaps some of you have already used some of these methods. So the first method is you can email the student his or her username and password. You can do that if you have the student email filled in this column here, or you might want to inform the parent. So if you decide to do that, then you can email the parent, and you can just do that by selecting the email link option. It will automatically select all the emails within the roster. You can also add additional email addresses, and it does attach in English or in Spanish, and then you can send the email off. That's a really easy way to do it. If you need to choose a printable option, you have two different printable options. You have a printable letter, and this letter is not editable, so it's just a letter that you can print out and you can handwrite in or affix a label to the student username and password area, if that's what you choose to do. And then there is an editable area, an editable letter as well, right here. So Brian asked me a question, can you change the username? So I wanted you to know, so this is actually a good question for everybody to know. So from the class roster, you cannot change the username, but you can ask, for instance, Craig, or I believe there was one more person on the IXL administrator's account. You can certainly ask one of them to change the username on the master roster, and then that will update in your class roster when that change takes effect. Okay, so many teachers ask that question. So you can change the password in your class roster, but the username needs to be changed by the IXL administrator. So that is the roster at this point. There is one more option that you can choose to use, and that is the Start Using Classes option. So if you decide that you want to use the Start Using Classes option, the reason you might choose to do that is maybe that you want to differentiate your class in some way. So for instance, when I was using IXL in second grade, I did use this feature because I wanted to look at my intervention students separately from my on-level students and then from my advanced students. Students do not see these class names. This is just for purposes of when we look at the reports, we can disaggregate the data a little bit, but we have to associate certain students with each of these names. So you will notice, for instance, when I select the field next to class, and then I select intervention, now Gordon is identified as an intervention student. I can do the same thing for Shakira Bass here. And then I can do the same thing for Karen Blessing. And I can just go through my list. And then what's going to happen then when we look at the reports is we're going to see that we can look by the entire class roster, or we can even look at just the 10 students that I have identified as my on-level students, if I choose to do that. Okay. Again, please feel free to write in any questions that you have in the chat window. I am monitoring that as we go through. But that's basically all there is to the roster. So it's very simple. You probably will not need to come back and revisit too much in your roster once you get started, except just to enter in a student name here and there, although Craig might be taking care of that through his administrator's account. So just check with him to see whether he wants you to be adding student names into your class roster for new students that come to the school, or if he wants to be in charge of that. Now you can also, the next thing we're going to do is go ahead and go to the math practice, because once students have their usernames and passwords, we absolutely want them to be practicing. And Craig, as you were mentioning, there's a lot of different thought given to how you're going to be using this. So we're just going to talk first about what you have available, what to think about as you are assigning, or as you're determining what skills you want to assign, how you might go about doing that. And then we'll look from a student perspective to see what they experience. So what you're going to notice here is right now we are looking at the grades organization for the skills. You see pre-K all the way through Algebra 2. And then what we're going to see here is we're looking at each of these different numbers. So for instance, we have 4th grade. And as we look, for instance, at 4th grade, we're going to notice that for this grade level, 4th grade, that all of the skills that we saw for 4th grade are now going to be in 3 different columns. And they also have these wonderful categories that we can look, category headings, so that we can start identifying what we're looking for. So we can see fractions and mixed number, algebra, and number sense along the top here. Those are 3 headings out of several headings for 4th grade. Now these headings are categories, are a great way to find the skills that we want students to practice, because you will see below now, let's say for number sense, there are 9 skills in 4th grade that are associated with this particular category. You're going to notice there is some kind of notation here. So there's a letter and a number. So if I want my students to work on place values, I tell them please go to 4th grade and you will work on 8.1, which is place values in this case. Now another way that you can think about identifying what skills you want students to work on is through the state standards link at the top here. So as I select the state standards link, this is again just another way to go about identifying what you want students to be working on when the time comes. Although some teachers just leave it open for students to work on whatever they want to work on. And what you're going to see here along the top are different grade levels. So let me just select 4th grade again here. You'll notice it's North Dakota here, and that's why I want you to make sure that that is correct in your profile area. And then you can select either one of these documents that's relevant to you. And everybody's at different stages of Common Core implementation. So if you're using a combination of both, you can print out both of these documents. If you're using just Common Core, then you select Common Core and print out that document. All of the standards for Common Core will be in black, and then you will see in blue the skills that align to those standards. And you can even launch the practice straight from here, just as we're seeing we're going to be able to do when we go back into the math grade level pages. You can print this out. And a lot of, this is how I use this document as I was trying to determine what I was going to assign to students, and certainly you can even provide this to students to use as a tracking device. There's a lot of different things that you can do with this. Okay? All right, so let's go ahead and go back to looking at the math skills from the category level. So I wanted to give you a couple of different ways to think about how you're going to start identifying what you want students to work on. And they can start on any skill. Wherever you need them to work is, you have all of those skills available to choose from. So let's go ahead and just go into place values. Place values. You will notice that as I hover over this, actually I'm going to choose the easier one because it takes me a while to count those. So let's do primary. Let's do rounding. Actually, let's do even odd. Let's see how easy that is. Okay, so if we take a look at even an odd practice in this case, what we're going to notice is, first of all, students are going to be seeing the practice session will start. They're going to see one problem at a time. When students answer correctly, what they get to see is, let me go ahead and answer this first, they're going to see, great job, or terrific, or brilliant. So they get to see some immediate positive feedback. When they answer incorrectly, what they're going to see is a question-specific explanation as well as reteach. And of course, this is why the program is so powerful when you're even using it independently, because that question-specific reteach is there to support the student in learning more about the skill and concept, and then they can choose got it when they've had a little bit of time to read that over, and then they can resume, they can continue to the next practice item. Now on the right-hand side here, we're seeing some statistics that are being kept on the students. And so what you're going to notice is the first thing we're looking at is how many problems have been attempted. And right now I've attempted 2 problems, 1 right, 1 wrong. So it's looking at just total number of problems. And then when we look at the reports, we'll actually be able to see exactly which items were missed or correct. I also want you just to bear in mind that it might take some students 20 items to master a skill. It should take another student 200 problems to attempt before they master a skill. So this number will vary widely depending on the student and their proficiency level. And remember, the program is adjusting in real time and adapting to them and keeping them in their zone of instruction, in their instructional zone. So that's why you're going to have a different number of problems attempted before they will master a skill. The next thing we see here is the time. So we're looking at how much time it takes them to work on a skill. It does not factor into a score, but it's just good information for us, and I'll explain later when we're looking at the reports how we look at that. Now, when we're looking at the settings options here, when I select the drop-down arrow and I select on Profile and Settings, this is a setting that you can choose. So as I go over here to the window, and I'm just going to go ahead and scroll down, you'll notice Hide Timer is one of my settings options. So when you select the settings option of Hide Timer, that means that anybody in your roster will no longer see the timer appearing in their practice session, but the time is still being kept track of on the back end, and we can still see that information. You'll also notice that you can hide the grade levels here. So some teachers like to hide the grade levels, especially if they are teaching, let's say, for intervention purposes. So what happens is the pre-K changes to level A, and Algebra 2 changes to level M. So you have a level system as opposed to a grades system. And then that way students are not paying attention to grade levels, they're paying attention just to the skills that they need to work on. I just want you to keep in mind that if you have the same student in different class rosters and one of you selects high grade levels as a setting, the student will see the grade levels. The student will see the levels instead of the grade levels because the setting will override the default. Okay, so just be aware of that, and that has happened in some cases, so I just want to make you aware of that. You'll notice that the timer disappeared because I removed it from view. And by the way, even though we can work within a skill from the teacher interface, it will not save any data. So whenever I make a change to anything, or if I exit out of the skill and enter back into the skill, it doesn't record the teacher results after I'm done doing something with the practice. So just be aware of that. The SMART score. So the SMART score is a very sophisticated way of keeping track of students' level of mastery for the skill. It is on a range of 0 to 100, and it is not a percentage. So it is something that functions very differently. When you hover over the question mark, you will notice that it gives us a Learn More option. And so what you're going to see now is just a nice explanation of what the SMART score is. So it is looking at the problems, number of problems completed, correct and incorrect, problem difficulty, recent answers are weighed more heavily, and consistency is highly rewarded. So let's go ahead and very quickly, let's take a look at a student account. So right now, I am in a student account. I've logged in as Beth Wolf, and you're going to see that all of the same links are along the top here. The reason that Language Arts is available is because I have a trial going right now, and all of the other links are there except for the roster. You will also notice that right now all of the grade levels are showing. So let me go ahead and go to 4th grade, and I just want to point out a couple of things here. Actually, I'm going to take you to 3rd grade just because 3rd grade has a little bit more information to look at. Okay, so what you're noticing here, on the student interface, a couple of differences. So I see some kind of number here after each of the skills. This is the current SMART score for the students. So first of all, that indicates to me that students can work on a skill and they can leave a skill, but all that information is there. They can go back and just pick up where they left off. I also see some medals here, so that indicates something to me as well, and we'll talk about that in just a second. So let's go ahead and go to place value models here, V.1. And I just want to show you something about how this SMART score is going to operate. So first of all, when we're looking at the SMART score over here again, this is showing me that there has been some work done here before. All of the data is current. It's just going to now pick up from where we left off. So I see a current SMART score of 81. So first of all, I want you to notice what happens when you answer correctly or you answer incorrectly. So let's answer correctly first. So you'll see that the SMART score will go up when you answer correctly. When you answer incorrectly, you will see that the SMART score will decrease. And again, the program is looking at how students are responding and it's adapting to them. And it will continue to give them questions that they need to increase in proficiency. Now you will also notice some ribbons here. These ribbons mean something. So the first time a student practices a skill and they earn a SMART score of 70, they will earn this first ribbon. When they earn a SMART score of 80, it will earn this ribbon. When they earn a SMART score of 90, they earn this ribbon. Now you can see that the student is currently at a SMART score of 78, but they have been at a SMART score of 90. And that's great. That means they were close to mastering it, and then they faltered a little bit, but that's okay. They get to still keep all their ribbons and continue to work towards mastery. A student has mastered a skill when they have earned a SMART score of 100. At that point, they see a skill summary page, and they earn a medal. So keep in mind again, as I leave this skill practice session, my SMART score is 78. There is my current SMART score, 78. So students can work on IXL for 20 minutes, and then wherever they are, they can exit out. All the information is there for them When they go back in the next time, they just pick up where they left off. When they reach a SMART score of 100, what they will see is a medal next to the skills. So these are all of the different skills that Beth has mastered. The great thing is, though, is that, of course, we want students to go back and to review skills. I mean, they never remember them the whole year long. We're always talking about doing some kind of SPAR review, or as we get towards testing time, we're going back and doing some review. The review is built right in because as soon as students master something, they can still go back and retake those same skills over again, because there are an unlimited number of questions that can be generated by the program, and they're fresh and unique to the student every time. And so you'll notice that this is that situation happening here. The student has earned a medal, but they are currently working on the skill again. The current SMART score is 82. So as they go back into this practice session, we'll see a medal here. So students can earn multiple medals. They will only see one medal show up on the grade level page. And when we look at the reports, we only see a SMART score of 100 the first time they've mastered that skill. So as far as the reports are concerned, once they've mastered it, they've mastered it. However, they can go back and they can work with it again, and they can even see their current SMART score. So lots of opportunities there. They can use it, like I said, for review at testing time. As they get into next school year, even if they've mastered every skill from the previous grade, they can go back and work on any summer attrition issues, or do any review because of those unlimited number of questions that can be generated. Okay, and again, please feel free to enter any questions into the chat box. Just going to pause for just a moment. So that's essentially what happens in the practice. So we talked a little bit about how to start deciding what skills you might want to assign to students, either through using the categories or the state standards tab, or and looking at the practice session itself and how it operates in the SMART score.
And then do I say, do I have to do?
Okay, so it looks like everybody's okay right now.
Do
So what you're going to see here is just a quick little glimpse of the reports from the student view. So we're going to talk about this from the teacher view, of course, because as students are working with the practice and the skills, we want to see what's happening, because whatever's happening on IXL gives us a great indication about what they're understanding about math in general, and of course meeting those mathematical standards at your grade level. All of the categories that we see here on the left-hand side are the categories that we're going to see in just a moment from the teacher interface. So I just want you to know that students have access to a number of the same reports that we do. And it's great if students are a little bit older because they like to monitor their progress, and if they're a little bit younger, then parents certainly like to be able to go into their student's account and to take a look at their progress that way. So as I transition back to a teacher account, let's go to the reports.
Oh, okay, they're early. Okay, that's fine. I'll get my pen.
And the first thing you're going to see is there are over 35 reports. So it's a bit of a learning curve. It takes some time. What I'm going to do today is to take you through 5 really good starter reports. And some of you might have already used some reports. So if you've used some reports, I would love to know what reports those are and what you might recommend to your colleagues. You can just write them into the chat area. So you'll notice that you have 6 different categories here. The first one I'm going to take us into is the status update category. And then you can see there are several reports listed here. We're going to begin with the class overview report just because it's such a nice, just easy way to see exactly what's been happening at a class level. When we look at a report, the first thing you want to see is in this green box here, that these are all of your report options or parameters that you can change and generate all types of reports, even from just one report. You can change the date range. So right now I have it on last week, and I'll just leave it there for the moment. You'll also notice you can choose the entire class roster, which is all classes, or let's just say I wanted to look at my intervention students and what they did last week. Also, you can select the grade, and I like to leave it open to all because I just want to see any skills that my students have been working on. I don't care about the grade level, I just want to know what they've been doing. But if you did decide to choose, let's say you wanted to see exactly what your students worked on in just 4th grade skills last week, you can certainly do that. You can even narrow it down to exactly what you were working on. So let's say you're working on 4th grade number sense and you only want to see any data that has to do with 4th grade number sense. Okay, but at the moment, I'm just going to keep it open to all. And then I'm going to update the report. And just remember to select Update Report anytime you change a parameter. And so now what we're seeing is a class summary. So this is showing me last week. This is how many skills were practiced, the amount of time, medals earned, students practicing. It, of course, just has the school year will always be showing next to that. And then you'll also see top students by time spent. And so that's just a nice way to just recognize effort. So, maybe from week to week, I always look for the top student by time spent, and maybe they're the student that gets to go into the front of the lunch line, or they get to do some other special privilege or task that I have that is coveted by others in the classroom. And then you'll notice that as we scroll down the page here, you have a bar diagram here, or bar graph, to show us what happened from day to day in terms of usage, time spent by category. This, though, is the area, this table is where I'm really looking for key information. First of all, I can see all of the skills that my students have worked on in just 1 week. So you can see that a lot of activity has been going on in just a week. You can also see that these are ranked by time spent. And as I go over to the right here, I want to bring your attention to number of students. You will notice that 12 students worked on place value in 5th grade. And then when I hover over that number, I can see exactly the students that worked on that skill and what their current SMART score is as of, and it's saying September 22nd because that was Sunday. So this is a great place too for me to see, did anybody go outside of grade level from what I might have assigned to them? So I did see that somebody here worked on geometry. I'm kind of curious who did that, so I can see who that is. Actually, it is Scott. He does have a current SMART score of 92, which is pretty amazing, being that he's a 4th grader, but that could mean that student's more advanced, and maybe that's his way of telling me. Or maybe something else is going on there. But this is just a good way for you to get a really overall feel for what's happening. And it's usually nice to run this report about a week or 2 weeks after you've started using IXL in some way. The next one we're going to look at is the student overview. And the student overview is also available on the student report side because we want them to be able to look at their own progress. And so as you look here, what we're going to see again is a date range. This time I can select the specific individual student I want to look at. Again, I like to keep it open to all grades just because I like to see what each student's been doing. We're going to get a nice little summary. You can see that this is also letting me know there's a news flash. So that means there's some kind of milestone that Beth has achieved. So she spent 40 hours practicing in math. And I'll let you know what that means a little bit later. And here we go. Here's that table we were looking at before. But in this case, what we're being able to see is exactly what her SMART score is and her problems attempted and her time spent on that specific skill. So again, when we talk about looking at all 3 pieces of information, the SMART score, again, is very sophisticated. We looked at all of the different factors that are involved with that. But you want to weigh it against, of course, the time and problems attempted. So she has barely worked on place values. Her score is not very high. After some time, though, we might see some improvement there. So I'm just going to let this go for the moment. However, on this particular skill, I can see the data is a little bit different. I mean, she's worked for 12 minutes. I do happen to know that for the most part, if students answer every problem correctly, usually it's an average of 20 to 25 problems, and then they will master a skill. So she's been working on for this for 17 problems, and she's still at a fairly low SMART score. So I'll give it maybe a little bit more time, and then maybe I'll need to actually do some additional reteaching with her or additional support based on what I'm seeing when I look at the SMART score against the time and the problems attempted. Another report that is very valuable, depending on how you're using it. So again, if you decide to use it let's say use IXL for computer lab time, or if you want to use it for homework. One of the things that you can do is look at the recent skills report, and by the way, if you are using it for homework, one of the things that works really well is you can either assign a time frame that you want them working on it, or you can assign a certain number of problems that you want them to attempt. And like I stated, for the most part, anywhere between 20 to 25 problems is the number, the benchmark number that students will need to answer to be able to master it if they answer all of those problems correctly. So either one of those works well for homework in terms of giving them some kind of limit. So either a time limit or a problems attempted limit works really nicely. What you're going to see at the top here is that you can choose to look, again, at your whole class, or maybe you just want to look at your on-level classes. That's fine. Your on-level students, you can decide. I'm going to leave it open to all grades right now just because I want to see everything that's been done. But again, if you know that you've assigned something in 4th grade, then you can select 4th grade and you can see what they've done in, for instance, the last week. Okay? Or you can also select the last hour, or the last 24 hours, or the last 48 hours. So there's a lot of different time frames here, and this has, of course, more options available for looking at recent time. So in the last 48 hours, the only student that's been practicing is Beth. So that's why she's the only one that's showing up here. If I were to extend this out maybe a little bit more, maybe I want to see, what about this week, which is really just 3 days, so I don't think we'll see much of a difference there. Maybe we will, maybe we won't. But here we can see that you can even do the 5 most recent skills that your class has worked on. So now we're seeing everybody in my roster is showing up here because everybody's done some kind of work, and these are the 5 most recent skills that they've worked on. And what you're going to notice here as we look at the table is, as I scroll down, let me just find Beth again because we've been talking about her. And this time what you're going to notice is you have this problems missed. And so I not only see how many problems she missed, but I mean how many problems she attempted, but how many problems she missed too. So actually let's look at the student above her, because you can see that the student attempted 21 questions, but 13 of those problems were missed. Well, I'm curious, what are those 13 problems that the student has missed? So I actually can select that number, and these reports are linked to each other. So when you select anything that's linked here, it will take you to another report. In this case, it's really drilling it down. So I started with just the class, then I looked at a student, and now I've looked at a recent report, and that recent report allowed me to actually see exactly the questions that Stephen Whitaker worked on for G.4 in grade 4. I can actually hide the answers and then update this report. And now I can actually go over here to the right, and I can print out a document that shows me exactly the questions that Stephen worked on, exactly how he answered, and now we can really troubleshoot before he continues practicing in IXL. So this is a great report for intervention. But some teachers use it for extra credit too. They might, they'll just go on, and after Stephen's done mastering this, they'll run this report, and then Stephen can go back for extra credit and answer the ones that he missed. You can print out any report in IXL, and you do that by selecting the printer icon. And if there happens to be a bent arrow next to it, that means you can also export the results. You also have the state standards category, and so that might work well for you if that's something that you think would be valuable to share with students or parents or whoever else might be interested in whether students are progressing towards mathematical standards or math standards. So what we're going to see here is, first of all, a student can be selected. You can also actually select, though, the entire class. If you just want to see how your entire class is progressing towards the standards, you can do that. Make sure you choose the grade level for your student. Make sure the right document is showing. And then when you update the report, what we're going to see is this nice little visual to show us how the student is working on achieving those state standards. It's at the beginning of the year, so we don't see a whole lot of movement yet. Now what you're going to see in this table are the standards, and then the IXL skills that are aligned to them. And then over here on the right-hand side, you will notice that, okay, under here, again, we have, again, here's our standard, here's the skill. I'm sorry, this one, here's the skill, one of the skills that's aligned that the student has already done. And the score and the score is always looking at the current SMART score, and it starts from the first day of your school year to the current day that you're running the report. Okay, so you can use that in a variety of ways. Do you have any questions about the reports that we've gone over? Again, I've just shown you a couple of them in terms of, performance for recent skills and usage for problems received, state standards for standards performance. So I'm trying to give you some different reports to look at. Okay, and in the last few minutes, let's go ahead and talk a little bit about how we're going to just, reward students for their efforts and get them, keep them excited about IXL and motivated. And so what you're going to see here is something called news flashes. And news flashes are really sort of certificates based on milestones that students have gained or earned. And those milestones, of course, are going to be based on how much, the amount of time they spent practicing, the number of questions they've answered, and on the level of proficiency or skills mastered in IXL. So you're seeing here right now is actually looking at Beth Wolf. So let's go ahead and just look at this one because we saw before in the student overview that she had earned a news flash for practicing for 40 hours. So when I select this printable certificate icon, you will see now when I open this up that this is personalized. So this is just ready to go. You just need to open it up and print it and either have a big news flash Friday, or maybe you post them in the hallway, or you attach it to some kind of other reward system that you have. But it's just a really nice, easy way to get started in noticing and acknowledging what students are doing. You can also change this to looking at the entire class. So you can change it to all students, or you can change it to overview, so you can even see what gains are being made as a class. So the class has answered 10,000 math problems. That's cool, and you may even want to share that on Facebook or Twitter or something else, okay, which we have some teachers doing. And it's very fun when they get to do these different little competitions from class to class. Now, I did want to show you before we leave from here that you do have this related reports section. And what this will do is, when you select this drop-down arrow, you might ask the question, how often are my students practicing? If I select that question, you will notice that what it will do is to take you to a report that would best answer that question. So you'll notice that it took me into usage, to student usage log, and now I can throw in these parameters and just see what kind of results it yields for me here. And I can just look and see, well, is this, is this a report that maybe I want to be using? And then if I don't think so, I can go back up here and I can look at some other questions. Which students are practicing enough? Okay, so let's see where that takes us. So that's just a really nice way to get familiar with the reports, is just to select some of these different questions, and now you can see it's taking us to trouble spots, low participation students. So we can get a sense of what that looks like. And before we leave from here, let's just go ahead and, as we start to wrap it up, let's go ahead and talk a little bit about the awards. And so as we look at the awards, what you're going to notice is that, first of all, from the teacher side, you can have access to all the awards that are going on. And what this awards area is showing you game boards. So IXL has game boards for every single grade level. There are different themes, and so this is just showing a 4th grade game board. Here's a 3rd grade game board, 8th grade game board. They all have different themes that are appropriate to the grade level. You can also look at each student, and you can see what game boards they have, if any, or what they're working on. And again, you can go through, and if you know that, for instance, the student's in 4th grade, that's a good place to start. So this student hasn't earned any pieces on the game board yet. Let's go ahead and go back to Beth's student account, and we're going to go to awards from a student perspective. And as we look here, what we're seeing is, let's go ahead and go to 4th grade. So Beth has been working on IXL. She's earning different virtual prizes. She goes to her game board, she gets invited there, she sees glowing stars. She clicks on the glowing star and she reveals a hockey stick. And she gets to see why she earned that hockey stick. Because she practiced for 1 hour. And she practices some more, and she comes back to her game board, she has another star, because she's answered 100 questions. Or she now continues to work, and now she's answered 200 questions. Or maybe she has mastered a certain number of skills, like she's mastered 3 skills now, so she earns this cute baby seal. So the idea is they're being rewarded often and frequently, and they are invited to come here, they see the glowing stars, they reveal their prizes. Now, of course, kids love to take these, and so let's say they think that snow monkey is pretty cool. So she can take the snow monkey and drag it and drop it into as her profile icon, so they think it's really fun. Does not matter how old they are, they just think that's a cool feature. Now, you're also going to notice, as I hover over one of the question marks here, that it's telling me how I can uncover this square. But again, students will just work on IXL and naturally they'll be uncovering these squares constantly until at the end of the year they have all 81 squares uncovered. And you can always make that some kind of goal that whoever can uncover all 81 squares by some date at the end of the year, then that's what they can do. Or whoever can uncover 40 squares by a certain date. These work well too, as part of a nice motivation system or intervention, I would say incentive program that you can set up. And on the right-hand side here, you're seeing all the different statistics that are currently being kept on the student. They can see what they've been doing. And I just want to point out that sometimes you'll see a difference between the number of medals earned and the number of skills mastered. Because remember, they can go back and they can retake skills and earn more medals. But it will just show that they've mastered the skill once. So that's why sometimes you see a difference in the numbers there. And then last but not least, for your continuing learning and just professional development in regard to IXL, when you select the membership tab and you select Learn More from the teacher area here, and even though I'm on a student account, it looks the same. If I were just in my own teacher account, it looks exactly the same. So it doesn't matter how I get to it. You don't even have to be logged in and you can get to it. Just push membership, learn more, and then under overview, select attend a webinar. So of course I always recommend, especially if you're newer to the program, that you do visit the webinar area and look for the blue squares because that's training. And I definitely want to just recommend that you, at some point this year, try to attend the IXL Reports Data Tracking Made Easy webinar. You can attend anywhere, anytime, whenever you're available, or it has to be around that. It has to be that time, but what I mean is you can be in the comfort of your own home. You can ask questions. They can be specific to your issues. And we have people from all over the world joining on these webinars. So it's pretty neat to hear what's happening in Europe in terms of using IXL and how they're using the reports and how they're using them in Canada and how we're using them here. So it's nice to have that conversation. So at this point, I'm hearing some, there we go. Okay, looks like somebody else joined us pretty late, but that's okay. So at this point, it's 2:19. If you have any questions, I certainly can answer them for you. Actually, it's a little bit later on your side. But we have a few more minutes if you want to ask some questions in the chat feature. And I can always unmute you as well if you just let me know. I can see who's asking the question. If you want to talk to me, you can just chat. Heather, can we ask, I want to ask the question, and then I will unmute you so we can all hear the question. That would be fine too. Or if you all feel like you understand it and you're just enthusiastic and ready to go, great. So the Lewis and Clark group, you said thanks, you're feeling ready to start. And that's just what it takes. It's just some time to explore, look at those reports, look at the questions, see what reports you like, and just remember that you have access to a complimentary training every school year, so we can meet next year around this time or even earlier as your school year starts, and we can, I can customize it to answer more specific questions. And again, just remember to check back at these webinars. We're always adding on new topics and trying to accommodate all of our different users, so we try to make sure we have enough times available. And you can always email me as well at accounts ixl.com. Okay, so I'll just wait for a few more minutes, and if you don't have any more questions, I'll wait until I'll wait another 3 or 4 minutes here just to see if anybody wants to write in, or if you just want to say that you're feeling great, that's fine too, and then I'll go ahead and I'll end the meeting. And thank you everybody for attending today. For those of you that are starting to leave, I really appreciate your time, and I hope you have a great school year. Thank you. Thank you, Brian. I think it's pretty great myself. So, that's why I'm working here. I use it as a teacher and I love it. Great. Well, it looks like we don't have any questions. Again, have a fabulous day. I'm going to go ahead and end the meeting, and please feel free to email me whenever you have a question. Take care. Bye-bye.
The organizer has ended the session, and this call will be disconnected. Goodbye.